next set of behaviors we're going to talk about are transparency, vulnerability, and trust. These tie together, but we'll talk about each one of them one at a time. So let's start with transparency. Transparency is about being visible to the fact that you even have problems, what they are and what you're doing about them. You should never hear the phrase, "don't air our dirty laundry." Fundamentally, dirty laundry, our problems, are there. We all have dirty laundry, we all have problems, so we're more effective when we make those problems visible. Now there's two sides to this. Early visibility of the problem as well as visibility into progress. So when we get the transparency early of a problem, it's really about being able to make it known that a problem exists as early as possible. We really want to reduce the time from problem occurrence to problem detection to problem visibility. Ideally, when we can make it all simultaneous, that gives us the best chance of fixing the problem while it's still small. And that's really the point. Problems grow in time, and so the sooner we can see it, the sooner we can make it transparent and visible, the sooner we can engage in it and the smaller that it is. Well, to do this, we actually want to design our processes to be fragile. As we do this, think about putting a bridge over top of a creek in your neighborhood or in your yard. If you put one log over the bridge, over the creek, and there's a fault or a failure, that whole log cracks and you go down all at once. If instead you build a bridge just as strong, but made out of a woven nest of many, many twigs, now when one twig breaks, you know that there's a flaw. You know that there's a fault, but the whole thing didn't go down. You now found a small problem that you can fix without catastrophic failure. And that's really the whole idea. Find small problems while they're still small before they grow. And when we make our problems fragile, we make problems visible more quickly. Now, in organizations that I've dealt with, I remember sitting in one operations review and they had a list that they went through, an Excel spreadsheet and problem, solution, problem plan, and they went down through the problems. Then they were at the end of the spreadsheet, but the conversation continued about problems that existed. So I asked, why weren't those problems on the list? And the response was, well, once we put them on the list, we're expected to have a solution. Essentially, those problems were not being made visible, which meant fewer people could engage in them, fewer people could act on them deliberately, and ultimately, it slows progress. Now, many lean processes are designed to make problems visible early, right? Whether it's just in time or adding granularity in team huddles to product development, they're all designed to find small problems and make them visible very early. In just in time, long before you shut down an entire process, you have a starved process. Somebody cannot deliver on what's needed in the next step. And that's not a breakdown of the system, it just exposes a problem that now can be solved before the whole system starts to collapse. So when we make problems transparent early, it's much easier to solve those small problems rapidly. Now, it's also important to make sure that problems are visible in terms of the progress we're making on them. Are we working on it? Yes or no? We don't have time to work on every problem. And it's very helpful to know which problems are we not working on. This problem isn't going to get a solution. That's fine. We can't solve every problem at once, but the transparency of that decision helps everybody that's experiencing that problem. Or are we making progress along the way? Or have we stalled? Are we backtracking? Are we nowhere in terms of solving that problem? So this gives everyone confidence in the effort going into the problem. Because problem solving is kind of the type of thing where all of it is work until a solution is implemented. It's not like we make a lot of progress on the results until a solution is there. And so having confidence in the progress towards a solution is important for everyone that's involved, whether they're involved in the problem or they care about the outcome. Now this is just as true vertically as horizontally, meaning having the bosses have confidence that we are working the right problems, these are the problems we're working on and we're making progress. Having that confidence leads to a lot less burden in terms of extra reviews or extra oversight required. That transparency gives confidence in the effort of the team. And horizontal is just as important for your suppliers and your customers upstream and downstream. Do they see what you're doing to make their process better, to make their outcomes better? That means that they don't have to work around bad outcomes because they know that help is on the way. Transparency is throughout the entire process. That problems exist as early as possible and that we're working on them on the pathway to success. The next element is vulnerability. This is essentially a weakness orientation to want to find the weaknesses in ourselves, in our team, in our process, in our organization. We have the confidence in our problem-solving capabilities to acknowledge that problems exist. Because we know that once we acknowledge them, once we find them, we can actually do something about them because we have the problem-solving capability to do that. It is the first step in actually being able to solve them. When we do this, we essentially acknowledge that any abnormal condition and any gap to the ideal state can become a problem. It's an opportunity to improve, and those are welcomed because, again, we have the confidence that we can do something about it. The key phrase here is that no problem is a problem. If we are in a situation where someone says there are no problems, where we look around and we can't see any problems, we look at charts on the wall and everything is green, that's when we start to worry. I don't care whether it's a customer audit that comes into your organization and gives you a perfect score, or there's an internal feedback loop, or it's your annual performance evaluation. What aren't we seeing if there are no problems? Essentially, if there are no problems, there's really two options in that condition. Either we're missing stuff, we're not exposing the problems, we're not open to those problems existing. Or option B, we're the first problem-free individual or team or process that has ever existed. Which one do you think is more likely? And so no problem is a problem. Of course there's problems. We all have them, every team, every organization, every process. Once we define them correctly, it's just a matter of finding them. And so we need to be vulnerable to them existing because we have the confidence that once we find them, we can fix them. Now, the last element is trust. And this is a big topic and could be a source of many, many videos. But trust is what enables transparency and vulnerability. It allows us to believe that the transparency and vulnerability that we provide, either vertically to our boss or horizontally to the organization or external to the organization, will be used for the right purposes. So building trust happens, of course, often first after we've started to provide that transparency and vulnerability. It gives people the opportunity to demonstrate that they won't use them for the wrong purposes. So there's 4 elements in terms of building trust, and we won't go into great detail here. But fundamentally, first is the demonstration of care. You have to trust that people care about your outcomes, even if the only reason is that your outcomes produce good outcomes for them. Either way, if they have a demonstration of care about your outcomes, it's easier to provide that trust. There has to be a communication of why, of context, so we understand what's going on in the environment, including the context of why those problems exist. We have to have competence to deliver on the promise. And in this case, it's the competence to actually fix the problem. If we have low confidence in the competence to go fix problems, we're less likely to want them to be transparent. And finally, we need consistency in all 3 of those things. We can't have some days we can solve them, some days we can't, some days we demonstrate care, some days we don't. We need consistency in those other elements for trust to really remain. So focus on trust. Trust is a key enabler to transparency and vulnerability, which is a key enabler to having effective problem solving throughout your organization. Fundamentally, behaviors matter in problem solving. Otherwise, every organization that has a problem-solving template would be doing great things. But that's not enough. The tools aren't enough, the templates aren't enough, and even the skills aren't enough. We need to build the right culture, and invoke the right behaviors, both wrapped around the problem and within the problem-solving effort itself. Then we can make our problem solving that much more effective.